Okay, welcome everyone. We find ourselves on Yud Gimel Amud Beis on 13b. We actually covered a lot of it last time, to be honest. We find ourselves, for those looking at the Tzura Sadaf, we find
I know
ourselves
what to do.
on the first big line, Ves Ma'amar Mordechai Esther Osa. So I would guess it's either the second or third section in the art scroll. Very unlikely that it's in the first section, just based on we're basically somewhere between a quarter to halfway down.
13B2.
13b2. Okay, Shkoach Henry. We're on 13b2. Sounds like R2D2.
There you go.
All right, so here we go. Again, this is just get used to this for a while. That basically what the Gemara is doing is it's going through the Megillah and is providing rabbinic commentary on the Megillah. So I remember growing up, we had the Perm Story tape. I'm sure I told you about it, and they incorporated all these details into it. And where they get it from, they got it from the Gemara over here. So as I'm reading through the Gemara, I'm like, oh, that's how they knew about that detail and put it into the stories we heard as kids. So buckle up. Here we go. That's Mamar Mordechai Esther Osa. Now, some things they selectively did not include in, and you'll figure that out momentarily. So what does it mean that Esther did as Mordechai wanted her to do? She would make sure to show her dam nida to the rabbis. So it's interesting. I forgot who I saw this by, but I had the same thought came to my mind when I read the Gemara. That's Dafka, she's supposed to show it to the Chachamim, not to Mordechai. This is actually, I think, a machlokes interpretation, whether she was showing her the blood, the dam nida, to Mordechai, or whether she was showing it to other Rabbanim. From the Gemara, it sounds like she was showing it to other Rabbanim, to the Chachamim, which makes sense, actually, because a husband is actually not supposed to paskin his own nida shilas, because there's a very high level of bias involved. So it's possible that Mordechai Dafka wanted her to go to other rabbis when she required a consultation. Kasher Haisa Bamana Ito, so Darshan, the next part there. Amar Rabba Bar Lema, Mishmei Derav, Shahaisa Omeres Mecheko Shach Hashverosh, Vitovels Vyosheves Becheko Shal Mordechai. So this line is going to be difficult to understand. We will elaborate more. I think it's on Daf Tesvav. We will discuss this in greater detail. But essentially, she would be with Achashverosh intimately, and then she would be Toveles. She would go either to wash herself, Rashi says, to cleanse herself, Machmas Tekiyos, but it can mean also have to do with our previous discussion about going to the mikvah, and then she would go and be with Mordechai. Now, I can ask, wait a minute. When a woman so if she's married to Mordechai, like we learned previously, and she's having relations with Achashverosh, what do we call that in halakhic terminology? That's nus. That's adultery. She's married to Mordechai and having sexual relations with another man. That's adultery. So that means she's asur labal, asur labola. She should be forbidden both to Mordechai and to Achashverosh. And there's a whole Tosos that deals with this as well. And essentially, the distinction is that initially she did not really consent to the sexual relations with Achashverosh, but then at a later point, when she wanted to make her case to him, that's when she actively participated in the relations, and so that's when she became usher to Mordechai, and that's what it means when she says "Kasher avadati, I've become surely lost to you at this point." But Tosos right here on our daf has the following question. It's very weird formatting for those who are looking in the Gemara here. So you look at Tosos, Vitovelis Vyosheves Bechegel Shel Mordechai. Tosos asks the following question: Dim Tomar Lo Hayasham Avchana Shlosha Chadashim Shevachol Yom Haya Osarasha Motzei Etzla. Wait a minute. The halacha is that, let's say a woman gets a divorce or loses her husband, and she wants to get married. She's not allowed to be intimate with the next man until 3 months have passed, because otherwise we need to do havchana. We need to be able to be mavchin whose child it is. Is it the first man's child or the second man's child? So if she has a child, we see that she has a child down the line, it's going to be unclear to us whether it was late term from the first guy or early from the second guy. So therefore, you have to wait 3 months. How could she be every day going from Achashverosh to Mordechai, which is like really crazy when you think about like how that even worked out, but that's beyond me. So V'yesh Lomar, Tosfos answers, Shahaisa Mishameshes b'moch, that she would use a moch. A moch is it's like a cloth of sorts, like almost like a condom kind of that they would use. So the question was, who was using the cloth? Was it Achashverosh or was it Mordechai? Well, for Mordechai, it'd be usher to use it because, just quick hilchos birth control. The kind of birth controls that are permissible in halacha are the ones that don't interfere with intercourse. That's why birth control pills are an okay, but using something like a condom is generally problematic because it interferes directly with the physical intercourse. So how the question that the Mefarshim ask is, on Tosfos, I think the Maharsha brings this up, is how can Mordechai be using it? It's usher for him. And if Achashverosh was using it, then how is it possible that Esther and Achashverosh wound up having a child together? So how does that work out? So he answers based on what we said earlier, that initially when she was in a situation of ones, she didn't want to be having relations with him. That's when the moch was utilized. But then later on, once she was the one who initiated and she became usher to Mordechai, that's when she finally had a child from Achashverosh. Okay. Anyway, that's all additional Mefarshim. Let's bring us back to the Gemara. So back to the Gemara, where are we over here? Bayamim hahen. Mordechai Yoshe B'Shar HaMelech. Katzaf Bigson v'Seresh. So this is the whole story now of the two guards, Bigson and Seresh, who wanted to poison poison Achashverosh. Arech Yevar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Hiksiv Akash Baruch Hu Adon al Badav Lasses with some tzaddik. So we're going to have one instance that we see where God made a master incensed with his servant for the benefit of a tzaddik. Umanu, and who is the tzaddik that benefited? Yosef. Shnemar b'shami tanunar ivri. So as we know in the story where Paro gets upset, he gets angered with his servants. So then he puts the baker guy and he puts the wine guy into jail, and they meet Yosef, and it all turns out well in the end because of them. Yosef eventually gets out of jail. Abadim al donehen lasos nesot tzadik, and likewise, God will sometimes make the servants angry with their master in order to benefit, to provide a miracle for the righteous. What is this case? Umanu Mordechai Tichsiv. Vayivada davar leMordechai, became known to Mordechai what Bigson and Seresh were up to. Now, if you ever think about it, Bigson and Seresh, if they had a plot to kill the king, why were they just talking out loud for anyone to hear? If they saw Mordechai over there listening into their conversation, you'd think they would try to be a little bit more discreet about their plans to kill the king. So Amar Yochanan Bigson and Seresh Shnei Tarsiim Havu, Vayimesavrin B'Loshen Torsi. So they were Tarsian. They were from a different country. Welcome, Toby. So because they're from a different country and are speaking a foreign language, therefore they thought, but Omrim, so what did they say? From the moment that Esther came into Achashverosh's life, we never got any sleep. He was always asking for, it's funny, the way that they portrayed in the children's version is a little bit different. It would just say Achashverosh was very thirsty at night, and they don't fill in the rest of the details that you see here in the Gemara of why he was thirsty in particular. So they were complaining that they always had to, bring water for Achashverosh to drink during the night. So they came up with a plan. You know what? Let's take some poison. We'll put it in the bucket of water that he drinks from, and then he'll die. And we're on the Yud Gimel Mid base, 13b. We're in the middle. What are we? Are we on the third? We just had someone join us. We're 13b to the third, I imagine.
No, still on B2 for another.
Oh, still on B2. Okay, thank you. Now, why were they speaking about all of this out loud where Mordechai could hear them? Well, they were speaking a foreign language. Ve'hein lo hayu yodin ki Mordechai miyoshe lishkas hagazis hayav hayodeh b'shivim lashon. They didn't realize that Mordechai was a member of the Sanhedrin, and the members of the Sanhedrin, there were a lot. They had to study a lot of things. One of the things they had to know were all 70 languages, which makes sense because when we were learning Makos last year, we learned that when someone comes to Beis Din and they come to give testimony, the Dayanim have to understand the testimony being given. If I recall correctly, there's an issue actually with there being an intermediary for those purposes because there could be broken telephone. So it was important. It was important for the members of the Sanhedrin to be fluent or fluent enough in all 70 languages. So Mordechai actually understood what they were talking about. It's like if you ever go to Israel and then like, they start bad-mouthing Americans right in your face. And if you know a little bit of Hebrew, you're like, thanks, guys, much appreciated. So that's, it happens where, someone's speaking Spanish, they think you don't know Spanish. That's basically what happened over here. So Amar Lo, going back to the conversation between Bigson and Sarish. Excuse me. Wait, but we're not on the same shift. So what do we do? I will come in for my shift and for your shift so we can hatch this together. Unclear to me why both of them had to do it at the same time. Maybe one person was, on the lookout while the other one was busy poisoning the water. And you know what? They noticed that there was an anomaly in where they were during their shifts. And that's how it was discovered that indeed they were trying to hatch a plan to murder the king. Very good. Any questions at this point? Okay, so just the whole sugya with the Moch and Achashverosh and Esther and then her going to Mordechai. Again, I believe on Daf Tesvav on 15, we should get up to that in more detail. Okay, moving forward. Achar Dvarim Ha'ela. So if you just look at the pasuk for a moment, Achar Dvarim Ha'ela, this is Chaf in mind. So this is basically at the point in the story where Achashverosh elevates Haman to being second to the king. So Achar Mai, after what are we talking about here? Amar Rava, Achar Shavar Kadosh Baruch Hu Refu Lamaka. After God created the remedy to the plague. Damar Rish Lakish, Ina Kadosh Baruch Hu Maka as Yisrael El Imkein Bor Lehem Refu Techila. Because the rule is as follows: that God does not bring a plague, a malady against the Jewish people unless he already created a remedy that pre-existed. Shenemar Karafili Yisrael Benigla Avon Ephraim. So first I will heal the Jewish people, and then I will reveal their iniquities. Whereas the nations of the world, Eno came. Mako's son, first God hits them, then afterwards he creates for them an antidote, a remedy. Shenemar to go for a host. So first God smite them, whatever it is in past tense.
Smote.
Thank you, Zay. I was right the first
It's
time.
the past tense of smite.
Okay, thank you. I thought I got it right the first time. Thank you. So he smote them and then he healed them. Okay, good. Moving on to the next pasuk we're going to darshan here. So actually, if you take a look, the Gemara doesn't quote for us the entire pasuk, but if you have the right kind of Gemara with you, your art scrolls will likely do it in the footnote, I would imagine. If you look down, we get the entire pasuk. So for me, it is none. For those who are looking at the Gemara, it's Daf. So first, he wanted to strike Mordechai alone. Kikidulo es am Mordechai. Then note that it says the nation of Mordechai. And then note that it says Kol Yehudim, all the Jews. So basically, there were three steps to what went on in Haman's head. First, Amarava, B'tchila Mordechai Levad. Initially, Haman just wanted to kill Mordechai because Mordechai refused to bow down to him, and it was Mordechai as an individual who was in the front to him. Mordechai, Umanu, Rabbanan. And then he wanted to kill the nation of Mordechai, referring to his fellow rabbis. And at the end of the pasuk, we see at the end of the day, he said, you know what? Once I'm going there, may as well get my wish come true and kill all the Jews. Okay. So what does he do? He peeled Pur, Hua go roll. So why is the holiday called Purim? Because he makes a Pur. He makes a lottery to decide which month he will decide to kill the Jews. Now, we see this in the Gemara, and the Gemara kind of has this idea, arguably because it was a general notion back then, that there's something called mazalos, and that different months have different mazel to them. So what Haman is trying to figure out is, well, which month will be the best for killing the Jews? If he picks a month like Nisan, God took us out of Egypt in that month. Different months were pretty good for the Jews. So which month would be a good month to where nothing special happened? In fact, something bad happened for them. So he picks Adar. How did that happen? Tana. Adar. Simcha Gedola. Why? Why was he so ecstatic about Adar? Amar, Nafali Pur B'Yerach Shemes Bo Moshe. Oh, what better holiday to kill the Jews? What better month to kill the Jews than the month that their leader Moshe Rabbeinu died? How apropos! Certainly, luck is on my side. Well, V'lo Hayodea Shebeshua Ba'Adar Mace U'B'Shiva Ba'Adar Nolad. That on the 7th of Adar, true, he died, but also on the 7th of Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu was born. So to a certain degree, it's also a fortuitous month because Moshe Rabbeinu was born on the 7th of Adar. So therefore, it's kind of funny. I meant to look into this actually beforehand, if anyone has insight. It's funny that he would know that Moshe Rabbeinu died in Adar, but also didn't know that Moshe was born during Adar. I guess he didn't learn the klal in the Gemara that tzaddikim are born and die on the same day. But it's funny how he had what he had? He had the Yartzeit book. There's these. I remember in school when I was in 10th grade, my Rebbe would open up the shir every day and he'd go through whose Yartzeit it was. He had a book that had all the different Yartzeits. So it'd be like you could be like Hasidic Rebbe in Borough Park with like 1 million of followers, and you made it into that book. So one day I was like being a provocateur. I looked up Soloveitchik's Yartzeit, which is sometime in Nisan, and I looked through the book. I'm like, why is there Soloveitchik in this book? He's like, he was a Talmud Chacham, but he wasn't a tzaddik. So that started a whole kerfuffle over there. I was trying to make some trouble. But in those Yartzeit books, I think it only tells you when someone dies. It doesn't tell you when they're born. So presumably, Haman snatched one of those Yartzeit books from the local cheder, and he didn't really know when Moshe Rabbeinu was born. Okay, I don't know.
It's now online. If you want to know days, you don't have to say Tachanun because it's some Rebbe's website.
Very good, Henry. Very good.
Well, maybe because the Jews observe the Yortzeit, and we don't observe birthdays that are of people who are born.
Very good. So, like along the lines of what Henry was saying, he only saw what the Jews were observing, which is the Yartzeits, meaning he looked at them like, they didn't say Tachanun today. Why not? You didn't say Tachanun because Moshe Rabbeinu died. Okay, got it. So, was Mordechai, did Haman even know what Tachanun was? Were they even doing Tachanun as this? Tachanun only became like an established formula later on. Okay, we could conjecture about this. Right, that's true.
There was a sinner.
That's true. Maybe. Okay.
If Haman knew Tanakh, he could have derived it from the beginning of Sefer Yoshua. That's how they bit back into the 7th of Adar.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Because it has the date when Pesach was observed when they first came into Eretz Yisrael, and then if you walk backwards in Sefer Yoshua, you'll get to and then the 30 days of mourning, and you'll get back to the 7th.
That's how we calculate. Very good.
But only if Haman knew Tanakh. I don't know that he knew Tanakh.
And even if you just did a cursory read through Tanakh, I once upon a time I learned Sefer Yeshua, but I didn't make that whole calculation on my own. But Haman's probably a bigger Talmud Chacham than I am, I'm sure. All right, so let's go forward. Where are we? Yeshno Am Echad. So Amar Rava, Leika Diyada Lishna Bisha Kahaman. There was no one who knew how to speak foul language. You speak bad about, just speak evil like Haman. Amar Le Ta Nichlinhu. So he says to Achashverosh, let's go and destroy the Jews. Amar Le, Achashverosh says, Mr. Really, I'm with you in principle. I love to kill the Jews also. But Mistafina Melohav Liavid be the other big Hamai. I'm scared at the same way God smote those who came before me. Remember, we talked about Belshazzar. I'm afraid the same thing's going to happen to me as well if I start over with the Jews. Amar Le, so he responded, Yashnu min ha-mitzvos. We switched Nakudos around over there. They've neglected to keep the mitzvos. That's what he means by the word Yud Shin Nun Vav. So they've neglected to keep the mitzvos. So now, and if I recall correctly, that was the strategy with the Suda as well. Getting the Jews to come to the Suda Achashverosh, the meal, was in order so that they would sin at that Suda, and by sinning during the Suda Achashverosh, during the meal at the palace of Achashverosh, then they would become vulnerable to Haman killing them. God would not protect them. So Amar Le, Isbuhu Rabbanan. But Achashverosh said, okay, well, but they got some rabbis who presumably are keeping halacha, so, they'll protect them. Amar Le, Amachadhein, they are one nation, which can be read in different ways. Either it can mean that even the rabbis aren't so good, or it can mean that the rabbis are responsible for the people not keeping halacha as well, or everyone's responsible for each other. And so just because some people are keeping mitzvahs on their own, it's not sufficient if they don't care for the welfare of their fellow Jews. So as long as enough of them are sinning, it's as if all of them are sinning, and all of them are now susceptible to whatever we want to do to them. Now, Haman preempts something else that Achashverosh might be concerned about. Now, I'm glad I got you on board. I'm glad you're not afraid of killing them, meaning you're not going to incur divine retribution. But Shema Tomar Karchan Yosef Achusecha. So you might say, what's going to happen? These Jews make up a significant part of my kingdom, and if you wipe them all out, it's there's going to be economic issues. There'll be inflation. There'll be more trade issues that go on. So who knows what? So Mifuzarnein bein ha'amim. They are spread out, amongst the nations. So, look, if one Jew in Denver and a Jew in there and a Jew over there disappears, no one's going to notice. So Shema Tomar ishana minayu. And if you're going to say, but the Jews are really smart, the Jews make the best lawyers, the Jews make the best accountants, what's going to happen to our society if we don't have any Jews? So, Mifurad, Gifredozo, She'ina Osaperos, they're like a mule that doesn't bear any fruit, because I believe a mule is a cross between a donkey and a horse, and so it's sterile. It's not able to actually have progeny. So it's like, they're like a mule. It's interesting how Mifurad became Kipreda, all these drushes over here, that they are, split off, and that becomes like a mule. Maybe there's a Medina that's full of Jews. Maybe there's like a whole country or a huge shtetl somewhere that makes up a significant part of my population. And if I were to kill them off, I'd be down to 126 nations instead of 127. Tamalomar, b'chol medinas machusecha. Don't worry. They don't have their own special country. They are just spread out everywhere, and we can round them out. Now, you might be wondering, what's so bad about the Jews? Why does Achashverosh agree with Haman? Now, Haman, he had it out for Mordechai, and maybe that led him to have prejudices against Jews in general. That's usually how things work. If someone of a certain group does something, then you could generalize to the broader group. That's certainly, like racism 101. But hey, wait a minute, what do they actually have? What did Achashverosh have against all the Yidden? So this was Haman's argument that he made to Achashverosh. V'dasehem shonos mikol am, and their laws are different from all the other nations. Now, listen to this argument and tell me if anything has changed over all the millennia. They do not eat any of our food. They don't marry our women. They don't want to marry their women to us. And they don't want to do any work. They don't want to keep any of the laws. They don't pay their taxes to the IRS. Because every day we want to get into work. They say, oh, I have work, but it's Shabbos today. Oh, it's Pesach today. I have another holiday I'm keeping. Pesach Sheni. I got no Tachanun. I'm off today. So, like, wow, this is like the same. Nothing's changed in history, right? And you know what? It's better for you. You'll be much better off without them. Because they eat from us, they drink from us, but they're a bunch of parasites. Meanwhile, while they're benefiting from us, they're busy ridiculing us behind our backs. If a fly went into their wine, they would pick it out, they throw out the fly, and they would drink the wine. However, if you, the king, were to touch their wine, then they would throw out the wine altogether, because stam yedam, right? A guy is not allowed to pour your wine for you if it's not mavushal. That's stam yedam, because the concern is, back in the day, not just back in the day, you go to like a Catholic service, they consecrate the wine, a wine libation. So the Chachamim said, because the way that the pagans in many religions, they use wine as part of their service, we can never know that if they pick up that wine, they didn't mean to consecrate it. Therefore, if a non-Jew has access to your wine and pours your wine and it hasn't been mavushal, then it's problematic. It's you can't use it anymore. Now, why do we care mavushal, non-mavushal, if it's cooked, if it's not cooked? So wine connoisseurs tell me that you can't compare wine that's mavushal to wine that's not mavushal. Because once you start cooking the wine, it's not the same wine anymore, apparently. I'm more of a Scotch guy than a wine guy, but I'll take it from the wine connoisseurs. So it happens to be the ancient pagans thought the same thing. If you were to cook the wine, they wouldn't use it for their services anymore because you've ruined it. So that's why mavushal solves the issue. So what he's saying, what Haman is saying to Achashverosh is that if you go ahead and you touch their wine, they'll throw out the wine altogether. You're worse than a fly to them. You're worse than a fly. So after hearing all this, Achashverosh is won over by Haman, and they come to an agreement. So Haman tries to add the cherry on top. So he says, you know what? And I know I'm making a convincing argument, but if it will help you, I'll make a huge donation to your palace fund. I'll give you a lot of money, Achashverosh, which is kind of funny because if he's the king, I'm not sure why he needs Haman's donation, but Haman is offering to, you always want more money, I guess. So you can never get enough donations, and that's a cloud gadol. We have to get the president nodding the head there. That's good. So he offers to give him a lot of money. This is really good. God knew. God exists above time, so God knows what will happen in the future. So God, the Ralbach has something to say about that, but we'll leave that for now. So God knew that many years down the line, Haman would want to buy off Achashverosh with all these coins, with all these shkalim. Lefikach hikdim shkalehen l'shkalav. Therefore, God provided us with the merit of shkalim, of giving coin donations before Haman's offering. Behind it, and this is what we learned, of course, in Meseches Shkalim, in the Mishnah. Bechad Badar Mashmin al Hashkalim Ba'al Haklaim. That on the first of Adar, that's when the rabbis start telling us, start sending in your shkalim for the temple fund, which is used in Nisan, and that's when they come around also to start plucking klaim out of people's fields when you have mixed breeds. So the idea is that God put it on our calendar that we would start donating shkalim in order to counteract the shkalim that Haman wanted to offer to kill us. All right, any questions? All right. Not a lot of questions on story time, I know. Well, we got a lot of story time ahead, don't worry. Okay, so moving forward, we're on the bottom. Here we are. Yomer HaMelech LaHaman. Every time I say Haman, by the way, at this point, I keep pausing, waiting for someone to beg. But this is the the 6:30 version, not the 7:30.
I was gonna say, yeah.
I think I got in trouble for that actually, because I told everyone not to bang, but because that's usually the minhag at the early minyanim. But apparently at a good Hashem we bang no matter what. So okay, that's one woman came to me, she's like, I was so thankful I made my train because we didn't do the banging. But okay. Vayomer hamelech laHaman, hakesav nasan lach ba'amatzos bokitove necha. Achashverosh says, you know what you're telling me about these Jews, I agree. It sounds like I could do without them as well. Get rid of them all, and you know what? You could keep the money. Amar Rabbi Abba, Mashal Dachashverosh v'Haman l'ma davar domeh. What does this remind us of? It could remind us of the following parable. L'shnei bnei Adam, la'echad haylo tel b'soch sadeyu, la'echad haylo chritz b'soch sadeyu. Two people, two neighbors, or two people in the same neighborhood. One person has a chritz. One person has a hole in his yard. The other person has a mound in his yard. So what's going on over here? The guy who has a hole doesn't want to fall into the hole. He needs some dirt to fill it up, but he doesn't have any. The guy who has a mound in his backyard, he's like, why do I have this big heap in my backyard? If someone could hole it, that'd be great. So what happens? Who will go ahead and give me some a tail, a mound to fill this up? I'd be willing to pay for it. Who will give me a hole so I can get rid of the mound in my yard? One day, both of them happen to meet each other. They're at Kiddush on Shabbos. They bump into each other. They both start complaining about their problems. Amar lo bal chritz lebal hatel. Machor li telech telcha, sell me your mound. Amar lo tol ota b'chinam b'halavai. If you could hold it, take it. It's like, imagine, if I have a couch that I want to get rid of, and you need a couch, so I'd say you don't have to pay me for the couch. If you could hold it, if you're willing to take it out of my apartment, by all means, you can have it for free. So that's what it was like for Achashverosh and for Haman. Achashverosh says, if you could get these Jews off my hands, you'll take this mound off my hands, then please, by all means. And you know what? You could keep your money. Just do me this favor, Haman. So it turned out was, instead of Haman, and that's usually how you pitch it to people. That's like, you say, that's because we're just talking about fundraising before. You don't say, I need the money from you. You say, I'm offering an opportunity to you, right? That's the shtick. So that's how you get people to contribute things. So that's basically how Haman got Achashverosh to agree that Achashverosh didn't view as him doing a favor for Haman, but Haman was offering Achashverosh an opportunity. And so we leave off with over here where Achashverosh agrees to Haman's scheme, and that's where we will conclude on the top of Yud Dalet and Aleph of 14a. And God willing, we'll pick up with that next time. Should be on Thursday, B'ezras Hashem. All right. Shkayach, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you again for the accommodation, for making the time. And if you are here and available, I hope to see you at the Ska Residence Lecture with Rabbi Grunstein tomorrow evening at 7. Okay. Shkayach.
Night.
Good night.